Um, Perfect. So yeah, Chad, I'll make sure you can share your screen if you have anything you want to bring up, and then we'll just leave it to you, and then we can hop into some questions after.
Yeah, it sounds great. All right, give me just a second and I'll share here. All right, is that looking right for everybody? You're not like seeing the wrong desktop or something?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, so yeah, I was talking with Taylor about the RACI framework, which I really like, and looking at how to introduce that in terms of just task and work management in companies. I generally work with companies that are younger, and so a lot of times older companies have entrenched project management approaches and things and that are kind of tried and true to them. But a lot of times when you're starting out, it's new and you have to figure out, okay, what methodology am I going to adopt and how am I going to manage the work so that the question of how we're going to get things done doesn't get in the way of your actual output. And so I thought I would start today with just a quick look at where a lot of the management theories that are really commonplace today came from, to give us a little bit of context for what's useful about the RACI framework. So to start with, I'm going to rewind to the 1950s. So this is Peter Drucker. He was a author and management consultant. He wrote a book called The Effective Executive, among others, that I highly recommend. This is probably my favorite Peter Drucker quote, right? The best way to predict the future is to create it. And he introduced an idea called management by objectives in a book in the early 1950s. And essentially, management by objectives was a way of getting everybody on the same page about what the goals were in the company. And then you would have an interval, a certain period where you would sit down with each team member and talk to them about how their individual goals would lead to the overarching company goal. And the ideas behind MBOs had been in existence before Peter Drucker, but he kind of popularized them. And there are a lot of companies that still use MBOs as their kind of core management practice today. In fact, a company that I was with just a couple of years ago, they used MBOs exclusively. With MBOs, a lot of times too, there will be a compensation component attached to those goals. So hitting a certain percentage of your goals is attached to bonuses or other parts of your comp. Just to sort of underscore that even though this was introduced back in the 50s, that people are still using it. This is a fresh page on Asana's website talking about the process for going through MBOs. And I'm not going to take the time to drill into each one of these, but just introduce the concept that, hey, there's a management theory called management by objectives, and there's lots of resources for digging in and finding it. A bunch of links of which I'll include in the slides at the end, and I'll share a link to these slides so that you can have them. If you're familiar with SMART goals, I think we've had a Midday Connect on SMART goals in the past. SMART goals and the concept of SMART goals are rooted in the management by objectives sort of theory. Now, then along the way, this is contemporary actually to Peter Drucker. You have Ed Deming comes along, who's a really interesting guy to take a look at. And he wasn't so sure about MBOs. So he was more, he felt like that there was a stronger attribute to the leader in a company and of a team, that the leader needed to understand those things deeply in terms of what type of assignments they made to the team, but that the leadership attributes that maybe that was more than you could expect for everybody at every level on the team to possess. And that the leader could carry those attributes and distribute them to the team, and that was going to be more effective than just publishing goals sort of top to bottom in the organization. Ed Deming's, this is probably one of his most famous quotes, is, "Without data, you're just another person with an opinion." Anybody who's involved in marketing or process improvement or manufacturing, you appreciate that the applications of that. And so the alternative that Edward Deming's story is really interesting. I won't go too deep into it, but he started going around in post-war US trying to show his theory that ultimately became TQM, became total quality management. And there was like companies weren't taking him up on it. So ultimately he ended up in post-war Japan where they just ate this up, and so he became the early founders of Sony were disciples of TQM. He went to work for Motorola and was a big part of Motorola's growth. Also, TQM spawned some children. So if you're familiar with Six Sigma or lean manufacturing, these are all rooted in TQM. And they're kind of two children of the same parent. In Six Sigma, the idea is if you have a normal distribution of, say, opportunities for errors, then every standard deviation from the mean, it represents 1 sigma. So if you go out 6 sigma from the mean, you're essentially at about 99.97% of opportunities for errors that you have no errors. So it's very high quality focused, high quality, low defect focused. Lean manufacturing has its roots in the Toyota way, if you've heard the book. So Toyota was kind of the one of the big adopters of lean manufacturing, where the idea was we want quality, but also we want super high efficiency and productivity. So we want to, where Six Sigma, sometimes you spend a lot of effort to try to keep quality high, but it's expensive. You spend a lot of time focused on that. And lean is more of, well, we could sacrifice some of that extra bloat that is that's attached to our cost and our whole value chain by operating very efficiently and focusing on high volume of production. And so from lean manufacturing, we get the lean startup and also the Kanban system that is popularized by Scrum. And Kanban and Scrum are not identical, but really similar. And Lean Startup kind of became popular from Eric Ries, wrote a book called The Lean Startup, but essentially taking the language of lean manufacturing and applying it to startups. Any questions on that so far? All making sense? I didn't mean for it to be too much of a history lesson. So then last week, Taylor was talking about the high output management by Andy Grove. So Andy Grove was the chairman of Intel and really brought a lot of this process in his book. And so he took MBOs and essentially breaks them down in high output management. He talks about this. He breaks them down and says, okay, MBOs are really two things. There's a goal or an objective and a measurement to see if we're making progress towards that goal or a key result. And so this became actually a new theory in and of itself called objectives and key results, or OKRs. You'll see this all over the place. This became popularized by John Doerr and Google. So John Doerr had been a salesperson for Andy Grove at Intel. He then, his career path took him to Kleiner Perkins. So Kleiner Perkins is one of the sort of old school, venerable VC firms in Silicon Valley. John Doerr was working at Kleiner Perkins and invested in Google, and Larry Page credits him with bringing OKRs as a management process to Google. And because it's working for Google, a lot of people are adopting it. Former employees are taking it to their next ventures and whatnot. So OKRs are pretty popular. And all of these things, the broader that they get, the more sort of nuance and sub flavors you get to how they're administered. But something that's a cool resource, I have a link to this in the end of the slides. If you haven't seen it before, Google's rework site is pretty cool. In terms of what they're really doing is exporting the tools that they use for management. And management in and of itself is a skill that we all have to adopt and continue to get better. Like nobody has this totally mastered. But Google's site is a good resource for that. And so I have a link to specifically their OKR page, but you can dig around inside the rework site, and there's a lot of information there. Any questions so far? Making sense? Okay. And some of you, this may be old hat too, but I think it's useful to kind of revisit the context for why we're talking about a lot of these things. And so ultimately, in terms of project management, these are all just ways of slicing up how do we distribute these three things: budget, time, and people. The management theories are helping us set goals and have those goals be aligned with company goals, but they're kind of individual, right? If I'm going to set MBOs, I'm going to sit down with each team member in a one-on-one, and I'm going to say, okay, same thing with OKRs. What are the goals that you have, and how are we going to measure them? We're going to agree to them so that this is not the sort of command and control top-down management style where I'm just going to tell you what to do and you're going to do it, or you're going to tell me. But it's something that we're going to agree to together. It's goal-driven. But they're kind of silent about the blend of roles and responsibilities in a team. And so that's where RACI comes in. I'd also want to mention too that OKRs, like the evolution towards OKRs, in a lot of ways separate out compensation from the goal process. Because with OKRs, the idea is that you want to set objectives that are difficult, which means that you're not going to hit them all the time. And if there's a compensation incentive attached to them, then a lot of times team members are like, well, I need a sandbag. I need to make sure I get my bonus or get this. And so they'll set a goal that's too low, where what you really want is to incentivize a stretch goal, so that where you land is you were trying to shoot for something bigger, and ultimately that's further progress than you would have made if you tried to set a more conservative goal. Okay, so let's talk RACI. What the heck is RACI? RACI is a way of assigning responsibility to different team members and stakeholders. So here's the define RACI slide. R stands for responsible. Responsible is the person who does the work. A is for accountable. Accountable is the person who oversees the work and shares the blame. So they are accountable for this getting done, even if they don't pound all the widgets themselves. Consulted is somebody who provides input and feedback about the work, but they don't usually do the work. And informed is a stakeholder who is not participating but needs to be notified about what's happening with the work. So to make this use a metaphor, we'll use Star Wars to explain the RACI framework. And the project that we're going to use to explain this is the destruction of the Jedi. Right? So I'm shooting for a big one. So in the destruction of the Jedi, we have the clone troopers, right? The guys who become the stormtroopers. They are the ones who are doing the work, right? Their job is to turn on their Jedi masters and kill them. So then we have Darth Vader. He's the manager of the stormtroopers. So he wants to get this job done, but the stormtroopers are his actors. So they do the work, but he has to. So he's not doing everything himself, but he is accountable. He has a boss that's going to come talk to him if the Jedi aren't destroyed. Then we have the bounty hunters. So the stormtroopers don't get everybody. They don't reach Six Sigma levels of quality when it comes to destroying Jedi, and so they bring in some consultants. They bring in some bounty hunters to help them track down and find the Jedi, and so they provide valuable input, but they are, and maybe they even do some of the work, but their role is to contribute their subject matter expertise, know-how, and information. And then we have the Emperor, and the Emperor's job is basically just to give the order and then stay informed about what happens. Let me know when all the Jedi are dead. And so that gives us a model for looking at RACI. And you can apply this to just about any project. So why would we do this? Well, a lot of times this helps us right at the outset avoid asking one person to do another person's job. I don't know how many of you have been in teams where it's like you get asked to do something and then your coworker also gets asked to do it, and now there's just confusion. Like, well, who's going to do it? Am I going to do it? Or are you going to do it? What if we both try to do it and we step on each other's toes, or we both try to do it, one of us does it better than the other one, or one of us does it and takes resources that the other one needed to do it? That clarity is important. The other thing is it helps you avoid the wrong kind of micromanagement and oversight. Another sort of tidbit from Andy Grove is the notion of task level maturity. So a lot of times when you hire a new employee, maybe they come with skills and abilities that match the job that you're hiring them for. Almost always there will be some sort of tribal knowledge about your company, how your company runs, the way that processes and culture are administered that require extra time up front. But very quickly, you want to get a new employee to the place where they have task level maturity over their responsibilities. And that means that they can operate with a minimum of micromanagement and oversight. So the RACI model helps us avoid that by saying, okay, this is what you're responsible for. This is the person who's accountable. That's probably the person who's going to be giving you the upfront micromanagement until you reach task level maturity. And then confusion about responsibility. So I had, most of you know that I did the marketing for a company called GoReact. We sold a video coaching tool into higher education. And one of the things that we had, one of our markets was American Sign Language. So American Sign Language was one of the, I think it's the third or fourth most popular foreign language in colleges in the US. And we had this video tool that allowed people to give feedback also on video. And the sign language teachers loved this. And so I was over marketing. We hired a head of sales who had been a lot of experience. He was a CODA, child of deaf adult. And he had a lot of experience with American Sign Language, way more than me. Like I am basically a blubbering idiot when it comes to ASL. And he was, basically like Morgan Freeman, right? Would narrate all the sign language movies. And so he was really good at sign language, understood the culture better than me, than anybody on our marketing team. So we would have a marketing project and we wanted his input. But a lot of times if I would go to him for input, it wouldn't be clear that what I was looking for was a C. And he thought I was looking for an A, right? I wanted his sign off in order to approve a project or before we went and did other work. And so we implemented RACI partly in response to that to say, hey, we just want to be clear. What I want is I want your subject matter expertise and I want your input because we need it. Like if we put a foot wrong, we risk offending this core client base for us, this core customer. So we really need your input, but also I don't want you to feel like that if you are too busy or you don't have it, or that I'm giving you the job and I'm abdicating my responsibility as the person who's responsible for that. And so RACI really helped us distribute and clarify the roles around those projects and make it avoid those kind of conflicts. Here's an example from Summit. So one of the Summit companies was Madra. We wanted to publish a newsletter. And so here's how we broke down the responsibilities. Austin and Darla are part of the analyst team for Summit. They generated the content. They pulled and segmented the list in the CRM. They were the ones that were going to hit send when the newsletter was ready to go out. So they're the execution arm. They're responsible. Brett's the company president over Madra. So he's responsible to get this job done, or he's accountable to get this job done, but he's not doing every step, but he is acting as the decider for task level items. So a lot of times that's really what you need in the CEO. Somebody has to be the decider. And that job is about making a decision. And sometimes it's between two equal decisions. You just need somebody to be responsible for saying, this is where we're going to go. And in this case, that was Brett. I was the consultant, so I helped outline the project. I gave input on the copy, but I was not directly going to be hitting send on any of those emails. And then Taylor and Spencer they needed to be informed on what was going on. And then sometimes they would slide into the A role to be accountable over sort of the global strategy for the company. So it's a good rule of thumb as you get some reps and some at-bats. Don't let a project out of the gate unless you have established, who is RACI and I. Sometimes this means, going back to the Star Wars analogy, that we need to unlearn things that we've learned. Take a look at habits and muscle memory that may allow us to skip over that step. Something I like to tell employees and team members is, hey, we're going to adopt RACI, and here's a little training on what it is, and then it's your job to speak up. If RACI is unclear, you need to say, hey, I don't actually know if I'm supposed to do this or somebody else is supposed to do this. Encourage that in the culture. And also let them know that, hey, if you have a question about RACI, you'll be supported. Like the management structure will back you up. If there's, you always have permission to pause a meeting and ask a question about RACI to make sure that we leave a meeting with these things clear. So it's a good idea to track RACI in your project management tool, whatever you're using. Here's a list of a bunch, right? Asana, Airtable, RAG, Basecamp, Trello, Workfront, or Monday. Here's an example. So this is a small project that my team had in Monday. And so we just have columns for our AC and I. And then we take, there's only 3 of us, but we take responsibility for that. And Monday allows us to have external stakeholders. So we could have consulted and informed stakeholders, and notifications are different, right? So if I'm just consulted or informed, I usually don't get notifications about a task has either advanced in terms of status or has been assigned. But if I'm responsible or accountable, I do. That just helps keep those things straight. And the net result is, of course, an avalanche of awesome. That's what we're all looking for. So in terms of resources, I'll send you a link to this as soon as I close the slides out. But here's a handful of really helpful articles about how RACI is used at other companies. I think this one in the lower right is a first round article about RACI that's really, really good. Lots of good examples there. And then also some links to, what happened? I lost my advance. Here's a link to high output management. Also, Radical Focus is a good book by Christina Wadke about sort of everybody. It's really a sort of like an allegorical book, kind of like the goal or what's the DevOps one? It'll come to me, where it's an example of how they implement OKRs in an organization, and it has a whole bunch of good things to follow. And then this link up here links out to the rework site for Google. All right, that's the end of my presentation. Any questions or thoughts?
Well, I just just support you on the fact that I think some of the highest value comes from visualizing it, like having it, whether it's in a project management or even if it's just on a chart, because that I think that's really the key thing about RACI is having it visualized, having it available, letting people know and understand it, and just going through that process even before you put it into your project management system. Talking about it and just having it visualized is key.
Well, and one of the things too is if you implement a process of like postmortems on projects. So like, hey, here's a project, has a start and an end, and then we're going to be intentional about doing a postmortem and revisiting this project. Like that makes it a lot easier. Let's say you get it wrong. What if you assigned the wrong person, or you didn't, for some reason you didn't implement RACI as effectively as you could? Having it written down or visualized makes it to where the postmortem's a lot easier. It's like, oh, hey guys, we actually did a bad job of making sure who knew that they had to execute what on this project, and we can revisit that and improve for the next cycle.
Hey, Chad.
And I also think it's a good. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Nancy. You can finish your thought.
I was just saying it's also a good step in the process of doing your OKRs or your management by objectives, because first, if you understand what you're responsible for, then you can set better objectives or OKRs. So it's like everything is a process, and I think they're awesome tools. It's a great job, Chad.
Thank you. Yeah, Spencer.
So I guess 2 things, one a comment and one a question. It's funny because like lean manufacturing, is people like, yeah, just in time lean manufacturing. As soon as COVID hit, it turned from just in time to just in case, and people were buying containers of inventory just so they didn't run out. It was like, what happened to just in time? Because it's just it just evolved, and it's changing rather than being dependable and reliable like it was. That evolution is kind of. Yeah.
Did you find that a lot in your business? Like, because like printing, like the just in time is a big benefit you guys are offering, right?
Yeah, on the 3D side for sure. But we still on the Dustless side, we're converting a bunch of stuff to 3D, but there's still a lot of containers that come over from China.
Yeah.
And it's everybody. I mean, they're just over ordering because there's so much inventory out there today because people don't want to run out. They don't know when that port's going to close down again or when people are going to go on strike like they are in the UK right now in ports. And so it's a scary world. So
yeah, I think we really got a wake up call in terms of our dependence on supply chain.
yeah.
And
So my second question is, I mean, I'm really big on KPIs and visualization as well. And so we have in our manufacturing facility, we've contemplated whether to do projectors and TVs all over the place. And we've tried different like Intel sticks or Amazon Fire sticks to plug into TVs. But sometimes trying to get them to stay awake all the time and refresh and stuff like that. I'm wondering if you had an easy way of displaying information like that.
So no, but I do have some other ideas. Like I don't have a silver bullet on that one. 'Cause we did something similar at GoReact. We put monitors around, and because we wanted to get alignment, and I think ultimately that alignment is not something where there's one solution. Like you want visualization, but you also you have to be preaching it all the time. You want your managers to preach it, and you want to show in your behavior that you care about these things. These really are the company's priorities. We used Raspberry Pis at GoReact, plugged them into the monitors, and that worked okay. But we still had to have a guy that was basically on them. And we displayed a bunch of it would rotate through Chrome tabs, and we would show Salesforce reports in terms of revenue and we had some of our other key metrics were we were trying to shrink our payback period and things like that. And then also intermixed with that as a cultural item, we would have slides that would show big wins, new big deals that closed, and other things. So you got this kind of that helped people want to look at the charts all the time. And so that worked, but it wasn't foolproof. And it's a similar thing where are there shared dashboards? We did some of that where we'd have shared dashboards that we would use for team meetings, and we always had the same stakeholders and stuff like that. And I know there are some softwares out there that do that we tested a bunch of them, and we didn't find any of them that were like a slam dunk. We liked some things from a bunch of them. Sometimes they'd be like Salesforce plugins or things like that that would just create visualizations and reports with the idea of having, and some of them even had TV modes. So they would be these really pretty full screen modes. Yeah. So I really like the goal and the idea of doing that, but I don't have a perfect answer. Maybe somebody else on the call has seen that done better.
Well, I'm not going to say I have, but I'm first of all, what's a Raspberry Pi? Other than the obvious to me. Yeah. Second of all, I think all of these different processes, it all depends upon whether you know the objectives and the goals and how to get there. Just because you set a goal, does that necessarily mean that that's the optimal direction to be heading? And so yeah, all of these, you have to take that into consideration. So back to the first question is, what's a Raspberry Pi? What's it doing? What is it telling you?
Yeah, so a Raspberry Pi is basically a small computer. There's in the world of people hacking together their own computers, a Raspberry Pi is kind of like one of the commercially available, really simple sets of type of computer. So if you look at it, if you Google it, Pi as in the Greek letter pi, Raspberry Pi, you'll see what that's all about. And so basically what we were doing is we were setting a little computer, in place of like an Apple TV. That's about the same size as like an Apple TV. We had this little computer connected to these monitors, and that computer was running software that would scroll through the tabs every so many minutes to display the things. I will say, there's one other thing that Spencer's question made me think about, it's not a direct answer to what you were asking, Spencer, but in terms of goals with individual team members, I wouldn't always set, like I would have them have a proportion of their goals were attached to the major company goals. And then I usually had some goals in there that were leadership or professional development goals. And I felt like that was, it strengthened the sort of cultural investment. That's like, oh, you mean I can actually spend time getting better at my area of responsibility? It's like, yeah, I want you to, take a certain percentage of your time and use that to sharpen the saw, right? To use a Covey term, get the, go to a conference, attend a virtual event, read a book, something that is going to put you out there to get ideas and things that you'll bring into the company. You'll add to the company culture and add to the, sort of our collective knowledge base. So I usually didn't have team members, where their entire list of MBOs or OKRs were attached to the company goal. But, and I mean, your point is also really good, Eric, right? What if we have masterful execution on all the wrong things? It's like, it's not as helpful. I think a team that executes generally beats a team that doesn't. Yeah, really good point. Other questions?
That's where the C part comes in. Is to say, no, if you want it to work, you got to do it this way.
Yeah.
Chad, I did have a question, and first off, thanks. That was, I think, really helpful for me to hear with stuff I'm working on. But I know some people on the Midday Connect that I've talked to before are kind of running a project like a one-man band, where they're like wearing multiple hats. And I'm curious if the RACI framework can apply in any way when you don't have a team. Like, is it worth almost splitting up the goals into RACI of like, okay, I'm doing all of the work, but at the accountable level, I need to be doing this. Like, I think a consultant, you could always, even if you're one-man band, you could always be reaching out. But like, is there value in using RACI in any way, kind of with just yourself? There's that.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's just yourself, then you're all of them, right? You're all four. But really quickly, you get to where you need things, right? Even if you're doing a lot of things yourself, really quickly you need external input about certain decisions. Really quickly, you might get to where your bandwidth constrained, and you need somebody to take some of the R away from you. And somebody is going to be driving what the overall objective is. That even if it's just about communication to an I, right? That there's another stakeholder somewhere that needs to be informed. I think you don't go down the road very far before it's not really just you. Like, it might feel like it is, but really quickly you find that there's other people that you need and that are stakeholders in what's going on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Awesome. Okay, I posted the link if anybody wants the slides, and that has some of the links to the other resources there if those are helpful. It's always a pleasure and fun to be here and see you guys. I don't know what our time is like. I'm happy to stay and take questions until everybody gets tired.
No, that's awesome, Chad. Thanks so much. Does anyone else have any questions they want to ask before we hop off?
Yeah, it was a good tour down history. I don't come from this sector, so it was interesting seeing it. Thank you very much. That was very well presented.
Yeah, I agree.
Very welcome. Very
Cool.
welcome.
Well, we'll post this video to the Midday Connect and include the things that Chad was sharing in the presentation. So thanks everyone for coming, and thanks so much, Chad, for presenting today. That was awesome.
Have a great week, you guys. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chad.
Bye now.
You all.